It's true, I'm 6'8". When I come into a patient's room, I have to make sure I sit down as soon as possible. You don't want to boom over the bed, because you know what you're thinking when a chaplain walks in the room and you're a patient. What crosses your mind? I'm dying. I'm dying. They sent the God guy to find out which way I'm going. He's going to check me out. Which is, nothing could be further from the truth, unless you are dying, in which case I'm coming to help out. A lot of people are terrified of the chaplain. They really are. I don't know. We're very nice people, and we're very compassionate, and it all stems from a misnomer or a cliche image of what spirituality and spiritual care is about when you're ill and in the hospital. A lot of people think, well, it's about religion. I don't know how many patients have said to me, oh, I haven't been to church in a very long time. And they immediately begin to feel guilty, which is an opportunity to either wield that power or demonstrate that this is not about religion. This is about compassion, inner strength, coping, and the connection you have not only to God, but really to your own experience and to your loved ones and to your life itself. So I want to first show you where I work. I work on the 8th floor, and when that's a hematology unit. When people come up to the 8th floor, they're hoping that they're going to walk out. They're aware, I've got cancer, I could die, this is very serious, I'm going to be going through chemotherapy, bone marrow transplant, really terrifying stuff. And so they're rallying the inner resources and strengths to work with the team. Now this is the hallway. I do photography as a way of processing what goes on with me as I care for the sick and the dying. This is the hallway, and it doesn't look like a friendly place, right? You've got sort of a overwhelmed perspective there, and you wonder, there's a patient behind each of those doors, and although these are your brothers and sisters in cancer, the journey and suffering, it's remarkable how little patients will talk to each other, how little they will share and connect with their experiences. And then, of course, the team is using all their expertise, and you, of course, are part of that team to care for these patients. What goes on in the nursing station, from the patient's perspective, is so vital and so significant. And you, as the caregiver, as a nurse, have such a significant relationship and role to the patient. And it's very different for the patient than it is for you. Now, I've been through the journey myself. I've had pheochromocytoma. Anyone familiar? Pheochromocytoma? No? Anyone? Bueller? No. Well, the full name is non-chromosome ganglioma pheochromocytoma. Say that with me now. It's a strange adrenal type cancer. It's like your body's growing an extra adrenal gland, and when your adrenal kicks in, it activates the tumor to explode with norepinephrine and catecholamines, and people usually die very fast from that. But I'm very fortunate. I've had it since I was 17, and it helps me appreciate what the patients are going through. So I've had 4 surgeries which have removed this, and I'm happy to say remission now for 10 years. But I remember a nurse coming in. She was my favorite nurse. And she'd come in the morning, this was when I was 17 the first time around, and she'd open the curtains, and she'd turn to me and she'd say, "Good morning, sunshine." And my heart just skipped a beat. It was lovely, and I was very naive and impressionable. And she was so special to me. She made me feel comfortable, special, that human contact. She wasn't always going to poke me with a needle. That little connection made such a difference. And she had no idea that she was caring for my spirit, for my soul, because I was afraid. And then I heard her go into the next room, open the curtains, and say, "Good morning, sunshine," to the next patient. Now, I didn't feel sad about that. I did feel sad about that. But then I realized she makes everybody feel safe. Just by the quality of her presence. It was so significant. And if there's any takeaway from this talk, let it be that it's not what you say to a patient that's going to care for their spirit. It's the quality of your presence. It's the way you connect small gestures, eye contact, tone of voice. They won't remember what you say. You won't remember what I say. But you'll remember how you feel. And that patient will feel safe because of your compassion and care. A patient feels very vulnerable, very small. And this is an aspect of the spiritual dimension of the experience. How small and vulnerable do you feel in this world? What is your place? How long will you be here? And this miniaturized view of one of our hospital beds is to speak to that. And lying in that bed, what is the perspective a patient has? This is a common perspective in most rooms. You're looking up at the clock and wondering how much time you have. How long will I be here? And you're wondering, when am I going to go into that light? That bright light, right? Am I going to die? Hopefully it won't be that serious, but for many of our patients, even if it's a very straightforward and treatable cancer, they're thinking about death from the moment of diagnosis on. They don't speak of it, but it's on their mind, and they're wrestling with it, and they're beginning that journey. And so they pray. They pray secretly and silently. They sometimes pray for the first time. They're reaching out for any strength and hope. This is our chapel. We're looking over Jesus' shoulder there. That's my perspective on the world, right? Looking down at the children. And there's the book you see on the table. And there are prayers that the patients and families write in that. And others come into the chapel and they can read that. It is so heartbreaking what is written on those. I remember going in there last week and there was a new note. And it said, my love, I can't believe that you're gone. The patient had just died. I close my eyes, I still see your smiling face. She talks about going to the church for the funeral. And she says, I'd like to believe that that rainbow I saw on the way to the church was you. I don't regret that I didn't go to the funeral home to see your body. Because that's not you. You are that smiling face and you are that rainbow. That is profound grief and incredibly healthy spirituality. Spiritual strength is not about keeping it all together. So many of us put all of our efforts into keeping ourselves together and composed because we want to get through this. But the point of your spiritual journey is not to arrive at the end of your life all together. The point is to arrive at the end of your life real, authentic, which might mean you are vulnerable and broken, but you are congruent in that. You are not hiding any aspect of yourself from yourself. You are fully engaged with your journey. And illness is going to amplify that. This is Ellen. I'm grateful to her for allowing me to use this image. She died last year. So I go in and meet Ellen, and she says quickly, I'm not religious. I don't believe in God, but have a seat. And we had the most wonderful conversations because we wrestled with meaning and illness and death and life and regrets and unfinished business. She was able to lay it out all on the table and have it completely received without any interruption or any judgment. I have the luxury of time. A chaplain can go in and spend 2 hours sitting with the patient talking. Now, you may be able to do that on a night shift, but not on a day shift. And the gift of your presence, to let the patient say whatever they need to say, is the most beautiful thing that you could give them, and their spirit. So, Ellen talked about her relationships. She had an adventurous life, and she had traveled the world, and she had been a teacher, an explorer, a researcher, and she wondered, what does lie beyond the grave? That's always a topic that will come up eventually. And the honest answer, the most honest answer I could give her was, we're not sure. The scriptures and the traditions give hope, and there are many, many stories, profound stories of people who've had a glimpse of the other side and come back. But there's no way we can prove it. So we were able to talk about, well, this is what people say. You know the stories? Right? The tunnel out-of-body experience, being able to report what is going on in the room when they shouldn't be able to do that, being able to report what family members are doing down the hall, able to move at the speed of thought to wherever they need, moving through a dark tunnel, having a vision of angels, sometimes being visited by a relative beforehand, but seeing deceased relatives beyond, a dimension of absolute love and peace and clarity and awareness in which they sometimes will have a life review. It's an astounding aspect of spirituality that isn't actually well known. You get a lot of good cliches and TV shows about it. Anyone watch Saving Hope? Yeah? Yeah. Awful show, don't watch it. That's not an accurate portrayal. I've seen a few episodes myself. But the key is these stories go back thousands and thousands of years. They're consistent across cultures. It turns out that it doesn't matter what you believe, it doesn't matter how good you are or even how bad, it doesn't matter how old you are, how educated, or your language. The elements are all consistent. And you are moved into a dimension, a realm where others are there, other life forms, angelic forms. There's a life review, absolute compassion, no judgment, and all with the goal of helping you be fully aware of who you are and why you chose what you chose, and it's received with complete compassion and with the desire that you continue to grow towards complete authenticity. I like to say that we're on a journey, and eventually our goal is to grow into love itself. It's a profound journey that doesn't end here. So what is spirituality? We've leapt to the afterlife already. I should come back because we work in this realm. Here's one definition, right? A process of connections, relationships to ourselves, the universe, to God. The big word in that is relationships. We are who we are through our relationships. And they are the most important thing in life, especially in a health crisis or when we're near the end of our life. We never regret or worry about, oh, I wish I'd earned more money or done this. It's our relationships that we tend to focus on. What's left unfinished? That's where a chaplain acts as a confessor to receive the stories of pain and undone business. I've never seen anyone exit this world with everything neat and tidy and all the knots completed. Everyone leaves with a messy ending. And we just got to be okay with that, with the ambiguity of it. No one gets out of here tidy and clean. So spirituality is also something that it's privately experienced, but it's always corporately expressed. It's manifested in every aspect of our humanity, right? Because spirituality is about your core identity, and every choice you make will reinforce that identity or suppress that identity. So all the food you ate, if you had an extra piece of that really incredible dessert that's out there, the way you spend your money, the way you speak, the way you think, feel, choices, all of them reflect your developing spirituality. And yet that's all beneath the surface. Most of us don't give a lot of thought to our spirituality. Oh, we might have our religious practice, but when do we think about my place in the world? How am I going to manifest compassion? How am I going to be a light in this world? Most of us end up doing that unintentionally. So spirituality and religion, two different things. Religion, right, about community and ritual. And very, very important. One's spirituality becomes much healthier when it is shared. And ritual action brings it to a new level or vibration. Now, you don't need to go to church to be practicing your spirituality. Perhaps you do it through your music, through dancing, through nature, through photography, through art. I use photography. I'm going to show some more of that later. How you express your spirituality intentionally and then share it with the world. Now, there has to be a healthy balance. When I work with people who are very religious but not very spiritual, you have a rigidity there, and you have a concept of God in which God is going to do something, right? We're going to pray to God, fix this, help us. So God is very much an external force acting upon that. And when one is very spiritual but not very religious, then often you get a spirituality that is so dependent upon your inner resources that it can become overwhelmed by the circumstance. So a healthy balance between the two. This is a big one. Spiritual health is not determined by the content of your belief. It's determined by the quality of your love. What does that do to all the walls and boundaries we build about religion, denomination, doctrine? Because the word faith comes from the same root as the word trust. It does not come from the same root as the word belief. Now, belief is connected to doctrine and creeds. Credo is the Latin root. But faith is about trust. It's not about what kind of God you believe in or how you express that or explore that. It's about your trust in love and how the quality of love is flowing in your life. You look at every religion, and bottom line, they focus on the quality of your love, how you treat each other, how you treat your world. So that's a really big one for us to get our head around. It's empowering and disarming at the same time. Illness creates spiritual questions like, is God punishing me? Right? Trying to make meaning out of this. What did I do to deserve this? Has my life made a difference? So always allowing those questions to surface, but never ever giving an answer to those questions. We don't have an answer to those questions. The patient might work out an answer. How? Through your presence, through allowing the patient to wrestle with this without editing or you interrupting or with a minimal bit of guidance. Spiritual care is always done with complete respect for the person's inner wisdom, and our job is to help them get in touch with that. It's difficult work, because if you're going to do good spiritual conversation, you're going to get down to the pain of the soul, the wound of love. And that's going to make it very hard and very emotional to go there. Which means the other person is going to pull back from the conversation. They're going to try and deflect from it. There'll be an awkward pause. I love using silence in my work with patients. You hold it. They get uncomfortable. You hold it. And their instinct is to avoid. Notice right now, you're listening to me, but you're also thinking about what I just said. Perhaps you're longing for more dessert or you want a break. Lots of different thoughts and things are going on inside of you. All of that is normal because we spend most of our energy all through life avoiding this moment. That's our nature. We spend most of our energy avoiding ourselves. But spiritual authenticity is full engagement with the moment, full engagement with yourself and everything that this moment contains, even if that is pain. So it's the fight or flight response. You want to banish trauma from consciousness. You want to get away from it. So spiritual work is compassionate care that helps the person go to the shadowlands of their life and explore. And in the shadowlands you find monsters and demons and regrets. This is an image of lights reflected in water, but it's also an image of the subconscious. There are monsters moving through that water, skeletons in the top area, and it's frightening, and yet it's beautiful. It's all just an illusion of light. And helping a patient look at the pain in their life, amplified by a healthcare crisis, and reflect on it without judging, changes their relationship to their own trauma. This is very hard sometimes. I was with he was in his 80s, he was dying, very elderly man. He seemed very kind, but he was weeping and weeping. The nurses asked me to come by and see what was up. Now, it was incredibly difficult to hear his story, because it turned out in his 30s he had abused someone. And he had served time for it a long time, but he had identified so much with his sin, with his pain, that he couldn't let it go, and he was terrified God would judge him and he would burn forever. You see, he could only speak in the language and images that he had inherited through our culture. Heaven and hell, God's judgment and wrath. What could I do? The best thing was to keep my mouth shut and to sit and listen to him, and then to embody the compassion that he needed to experience without judging him, exploring deeper into his family and the source of his pain. What was it like to serve time? How have you been carrying this pain? Who are you now? What is your true core self? Eventually, he asked for forgiveness. He'd never done that. He'd served many years, I think 15 years in prison, but he'd never experienced forgiveness or had a ritual action to close that painful chapter of his life and integrate and understand who he was with who he is and who he thought he might become. So that's when I did become the priest. I am an ordained minister, so I put on my stole, I got out my book, and I anointed him, and we had confession and forgiveness. And he died about an hour later, and peaceful. And it was profound. The ritual ended up doing so much more than the poverty of my words could. If you get in a situation like that, please call the chaplain. Contrary to what people often think, the key to erasing people's suffering is not in offering some insidious theodicy, but in allowing a place for people to mourn and meet others and know what it's like. So the job is not to fix anyone, to make them feel better. I do not want to make anyone feel better. I want to help them be real and encounter the raw nature of their humanity and experience full acceptance. Not to stay that way, but to become, again, back to their core nature. So what is an insidious theodicy? Here's some examples. These are very easy to say. And we say these things when we are uncomfortable and want to make the person feel better because we're anxious. Love that one. God doesn't give us any more than we can handle. Well, then I wish God wouldn't trust me so much. Right? We hear a lot of families say this. We hear a lot of friends say this. We may have said these words. And at the time, perhaps we're doing our best to help. But there's something better we can do, which is silence and listening, and questions like, what's this like for you? Can you say more? It's hard to say that one without sounding like you're saying that one. Sounding like a clinician. When the patient says these things, that's fine because that's them wrestling with their experience. But when others say these things, they can become spiritual cliches. And those aren't too helpful. So it's not what you say, but how you're present. Be prepared to spend time focused on their experience. So you got to check yourself at the door. You may have, you may be able to identify with what a patient say. For myself, I've had cancer 4 times now, and I could offer that quickly, but I rarely ever do because it's not about my cancer, it's about theirs. I can empathize with scans and IVs and the experience of cancer, but I do not know what it's like to have chemotherapy or radiation, and my cancer is very different from theirs, so I don't bring it up. But I can resonate with their experience, and through that demonstrate that I'm in solidarity, I'm lined up with it. Let the patient lead. Embody empathy, do not abandon. That's a big one. Don't abandon them, especially when the conversation gets awkward or difficult. A lot of times I've said, I don't know where to go with this. We've hit on something that seems really big. So I'm just naming the awkwardness or the pause in the conversation. And then the patient acknowledges it because we both feel it. This afternoon, my appointment before coming here, I'm sitting with the guy. He is a woodsman, he is tough, he has 3 teenagers, and he is going to die. And he sat and he cried with me. And he said, thank you, because I can't cry with anyone. I can't let them see it. I don't want to be weak. I got to keep it together for them. It was a privilege just to witness his vulnerability. And in doing so, he encountered a part of himself that he had suppressed for a long time. So there's lots of religious practice. It doesn't matter what your religion is. But spiritual care always honors and respects a person's faith tradition. So if a person is Muslim, I will ask them, tell me what gives you strength from your faith tradition. Right? What scriptures, what practices, are you able to pray in your room? You're not able to get out of bed, you're too weak. How can we help you? Can we align the bed so that you can at least look at Mecca when you pray? But I don't pretend to be a Muslim. I'm from a Christian tradition. With Buddhists, I will offer meditations. Tonglen is a beautiful meditation. Anyone know what Tonglen is? Okay, so Tonglen is lovely. You focus on what is upsetting you the most, and then you try and take that on from everybody else. So a patient is nauseous, and I'll guide them in a progressive muscle relaxation, and then I'll say, I'd like you to really focus on the nausea and how it feels in your body. Well, they don't want to do that. They want to suppress that or medicate that and get away from that. But it's interesting with nausea. When you move into it, your relationship to it shifts because anxiety will feed nausea. So they focus on what the nausea feels like, and I say, now I'd like you to breathe in the same thing from all the patients around you. And breathe back your compassion and light to those patients. So you take in what ails you and you give away what you want. And this is a profound way of activating compassion for your own experience. I've done this with patients who are dying. I've done this with patients who are experiencing profound physical pain, who are worried about their families. It doesn't matter. Becoming a compassionate light in your own pain changes your relationship to your own pain. Art is also a fantastic way to connect with the inner wisdom. So here's an image that a woman drew while she was receiving chemotherapy. That's why you see all the red on her, but she's surrounded and held by an angel. Now, she doesn't need to be a great artist. I said, just draw it. Draw what you need. And by doing so, she encountered that deep wisdom within herself. This is another one. This is a big painting. Laura was traveling the world. She was on a sailing ship, and she was in the Philippines at the time. Developed acute leukemia, had to be flown back to Canada. And she was an artist. And after her inpatient treatments, and as an outpatient, I said, I would like you to paint your recovery. And paint it large. And so this is hanging in the alcove right outside of my office. It's about 6 feet wide. And it's filled with imagery. I said, don't filter, just sketch it out and then paint it and see what arises. So I'd like you to look at the spiritual wisdom in this. It's sort of a Garden of Eden kind of scene. There's this tree of life that is walking. It's not rooted in, it's walking upon the land. And it's swirling with energy. Same with the other trees. They're more like energy waves than trees themselves. Now everything has a partner in this. The man and the woman represent yin and the yang. The man is in, what pose is that? Is that the mountain pose? Tree pose. Tree pose, right, because he's in front of the tree, I'm sorry. So he's in the tree pose, grounded to the earth, rooted and reaching up strength to the sky, and nice and solid, supported by the other tree. And then she has her hands in the water, water representing life and cleansing and health and vitality. Then we've got two looms, right? The haunting call of them is spiritually evocative. We have healing flowers of dandelion and echinacea. We have two butterflies, symbols of transformation. We have two eagles. Now one is testing the wind and the other is taking flight, and they represent courage. And then you have night and day, and the moon up in the corner is a partner with the dolphin. Now the moon represents a beacon, you know, a light in the night, mystery, the unknown. The dolphin representing life and vitality and joy, and of course because she was on a tall ship sailing the world, right? The water was so important. And then in the distance, the twin mountains represent the unknown future of the promised land. Now, she didn't know all of this when she was painting. She was just painting what came from her subconscious. Just any image, just like free association. And then we sat together and we analyzed it. And it was lovely to see what came from deep in her core. This was a part of her that she had never met before. This was her spirit. Now, I use photography to process what I experience, and this is one of my images. You might be thinking, what the heck is it? It's a mirror image of a decaying tree. And in the center is sort of a meditating figure. You can sort of make that out, not really human, but there's light coming in from above, and there's groundedness to below, and that figure represents meditation, one who is fully present. Around is this gnarled wood, this sort of chaos. These are the interruptions of the mind. This is the pain of the psyche. And that doesn't go away because you're being mindful or you're practicing meditation. Being spiritually healthy does not mean the mess goes away. If anything, it amplifies the mess in your life because you're more open to compassion and vulnerability, and you're able to stay with it. So that's what the task of meditation is for, something I use with patients. That's what the image represents. So when would you call a chaplain? When to call spiritual care? There are lots of times. End of life is one of the obvious ones. Patient's request is one. But the continuum of distress goes on throughout illness, especially prolonged illness. Diagnosis, distress goes up. Life feels threatened. Then once again during treatment. Then once again during side effects, recovery, fear of relapse when it's cancer. Difficulties coping with the diagnosis, discouragement. Often a patient is very afraid for their family. You know what the top concerns are amongst patients. The number one concern, even if it's, especially if it's palliative, the number one concern is my family's well-being, my loved ones. It's not my own. Why? Because relationships is what it's all about. So, how's my family's well-being? The second top priority